from his groundbreaking podcast, his hilarious stand-up comedy, our next guest has been entertaining audiences for years, and tonight he's bringing his talent to Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club with 2 shows.
Welcome, Adam Carolla.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have you on the show. Performing at Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club, obviously, and ironically, I mean, or unironically, I don't know what it is, but you and Jimmy go way back as well.
Yeah, I met Jimmy 30 years ago.
30-year friendship.
30-year friendship, yeah. Well, I was a boxing coach when I met him. He was doing morning radio in Los Angeles. I trained him to do a morning stunt boxing match between Jimmy the sports guy and Michael the maintenance man, who are both characters on the Kevin and Bean morning show. I ended up getting Jimmy. We became friends, and I basically begged him to get me on the radio, and he got me on the radio, and the rest was history.
Beautiful.
Now, you've had a real incredible and interesting journey before getting into comedy. I mean, you've been the boxing trainer, as you mentioned, but what were some of the other jobs you did before you got into entertainment?
I was a carpenter for over a decade, so I didn't go to college. I just worked, drove a truck, and swung a hammer. And that was basically my skill and my job from high school until I met Jimmy. And even after I met Jimmy, I remained a carpenter for about another year and a half before I sort of made my way into getting paid in show business. So I was a carpenter and I was a knock-around guy, and it was too hot, and I didn't like it, and it didn't pay very well, and it was just it's a tough job, you know. Yeah. And I just thought, I want to do something else one day, and what else could I do? And I knew I couldn't be a doctor or a lawyer. I didn't have that skill set, but I thought I was funny. So while I was doing carpentry, I started working on comedy. So I'd do carpentry during the day, and then I would do comedy at night. And by the time I met Jimmy, I was sort of ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, Jimmy as well. I mean, you're on Crank Yankers. You've done a number of, the Adam Carolla Show, and of course, the Adam Carolla podcast is something that's been hugely successful. Guinness World Record, recognized for the most downloaded podcast. Do you have any favorite guests that have been on there, or guests that you were like desperate to get on? There must be some incredible stories that you can tell from behind the scenes there.
Yeah, there's a lot of really fascinating people. I mean, just off the top of my head, guys like Bryan Cranston or Alec Baldwin, really.
Just throwing some names out.
Yeah. Well,
no big deals.
I can't go with names your audience doesn't recognize. because, Jim Blowerson.
All right.
See?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. I don't know that guy.
But has there been any special ones that you've been like, my God, that was like not just a great interview, but someone you were desperate to like chat with?
I'm lucky because I sat down with Mike Rowe for an hour and a half and talked to him like about life and work and society in this country, and then I get Riley Gaines in there after him, and she's talking about stuff, and so I just get to have these very intimate, strong conversations that I know from your world, you're on the clock. You know what I mean? I move out, dog lovers move in. I think they're over there, turn the page,
Right.
But for me, it's like sitting and doing this for an hour and a half. Like, you can get into, well, you're a carpenter, you're a boxing coach, but you can't do 20 minutes on it, and that's a different form, but you really get to know who these people are.
Yeah.
What originally inspired you to create the podcast?
I was doing morning radio in Los Angeles. I kept getting these reports that we have 19 million minutes of streaming online, and the radio station would give them to me, and I'd say, well, that's a good thing, and they'd say, oh, who cares, because we're a radio station, we don't need about streaming online. But it stuck in my head, and when the station folded and flipped format, I was like, well, if there's all this streaming online, then I'll just take it online.
Yeah. So you're performing obviously tonight at your good friend Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club. What can people expect from an Adam Carolla performance? The
first show is going to be a live podcast. So Michael Yo and Josh Wolf, I think it's Josh Wolf's going to be out with us. It's going to be live formatted as a podcast, which I do a lot of live podcasts, and that'll air. So that'll be recorded and air as a podcast, so you'll be a part of a live podcast. Aaron, the second one is just a stand-up show. That's just 90 minutes of stand-up.
That's very cool.
Great.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
sounds
Yeah.
very fun. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, to get your tickets to Adam Carolla's upcoming shows, be sure to head to jimmykimmelscomedyclub.com.